society, capacity for public sector, democracy and good governance. And these are collective action issues. This is your classic collective action problem. And I will pivot to the second panel. I think you are talking about collective action around the Great War. So I will hand over the baton to Claude. Thank you very much for your attention.
I'm going to introduce Claude because otherwise nobody will introduce him. Claude Godesky is unique, is very impressive, and he has different capacities. So, entrepreneur, investor, and also a producer of movie or documentary, and this is what he will present, and then he will actually be the moderator of the panel. The movie you have a documentary you have produced, the Great Green Wall documentary, has been a milestone and it's so impressive, and we're going to be I'd like to watch 10 minutes of this documentary, so I give you the floor first to Claude to introduce your documentary, and then you will be moderating the panel.
Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, Lina, and this wonderful panel that we've just been really grateful enough to be part of. I feel like, for me, this Great Green Wall journey should have started a long time ago, but it really only started 4 years ago. And the way that it started was when my friend, Fernando Meirelles, who is a Brazilian filmmaker who made one of my all-time favorite films called City of God, he called me one day and he said, well, we should make a film together. And so when Jeremy said I was a film producer, I was never a film producer until I got that call. And I said, well, what should this film be about? I said, the answer is yes, without knowing what the film was going to be about. And he said, really, we should make a film about the Great Green Wall. And I asked him, what is the Great Green Wall? I'd never heard of it. And he was really surprised because I'm from Togo. I spent my entire adult life in the information industries. I've created several successful media ventures, and my job is to be informed about the things that are happening in Africa. And I never heard of it. And when he started telling me about this project, which essentially is an 8,000 kilometer wall of trees that is being planted from Senegal all the way to Djibouti, I realized that it was a really important project for the future of Africa. And then I started researching it on the internet and on Google as we do these days. And I found out that this project was actually conceived in the 1980s by one of my heroes, one of my favorite freedom fighters, the late President Thomas Sankara, who said, we must dare to invent the future. And in 2007, the project became reality through the African Union around this ambition of creating 10 million green jobs around the Sahel and looking towards 100 million hectares of land being restored through the Great Green Wall. So it was truly a transformative project. So when I said yes, then the next thing is, well, we have to raise the money. And so we had to raise $2 million, and I'm really happy that several of the people who supported us in this effort, who supported us financially, are in this room today. The UNCCD funded us, the World Bank funded us, the SOS Sahel funded us. Thank you, Remy. So I went hand in hand trying to collect money to make this film because we had to shoot in 5 different countries. We shot in Senegal, we shot in Mali, we shot in Nigeria, we shot in Niger, and then we shot in Ethiopia. And shooting a movie, a documentary in Africa is extremely difficult. So the film was released in March of 2020. And unfortunately, this is the month that cinemas close around the world. So here we were, we realized this was going to be a film for festivals. So we went around the world showing this movie, and we won 19 awards in festivals all over the world. I'm really proud that we could experience 10 minutes of this movie, and then we'll be able to talk about what it actually means for the future of Africa in an environment when, as Lisa said, the median age in the Sahel is 16. So we'll talk about some of the underlying issues and why we have so much hope for the Great Green Wall. So thank you, and we'll see you in 10 minutes.
For the youth across Africa, Niger is the crossroads on the way to Europe. are expected to leave by 2050. What else can you do? Then try to find a better life.
Bonjour Aboubakar.
Ouais,
Enchantée.
si c'est la gare de Ouadata,
D'accord.
oui, là où souvent les migrants viennent se réfugier avant d'aller en Europe.
Donc c'est le carrefour ici pour aller vers l'Europe ou aux États-Unis.
Oui, oui.
Ce sont des gens qui viennent d'où?
La majeure partie, c'est le West africain. Souvent, la destination, c'est vers Agadez. Parce qu'une fois arrivé à Agadez, si tu veux partir vers Algérie, tu vas partir. Si tu veux partir vers Libye, toujours il y a ces destinations.
D'accord.
Bonjour, mon frère.
Non. Excusez-moi.
Non, c'est pas pivot de réfugiés.
Non. Attention.
Ça arrive souvent. Ils ont peur.
Parce que c'est illégal.
Ouais, c'est illégal.
Eux, ce sont des gens qui aident les migrants à voyager. C'est un peu des passeurs.
Voilà. Souvent, je viens à la rencontre des migrants qui veulent de l'aide. Parce que présentement, franchement, c'est de vendre son âme.
Et vous avez une expérience personnelle qui vous fait dire ça?
Oui, parce que j'ai vécu. J'ai fait 6 mois en prison en Libye. En tout ça. On te prend ici jusqu'à Agadez. Le convoyeur va te donner à un autre convoyeur. Tu es déjà vendu à ce convoyeur sans te rendre compte. Hommes et femmes, les enfants, tout. Je vois comment on torture, on viole les femmes. Ils vont t'obliger à appeler tes parents d'envoyer de l'argent. Si tes parents n'ont pas de l'argent, si tu es une femme, on va te mettre dans une chambre où les Arabes vont venir coucher avec toi juste pour qu'ils récupèrent l'argent.
Et pour les hommes, quel est le sort réservé aux hommes?
Ou bien tes parents envoient de l'argent, ou bien on tue les hommes. J'ai eu 4 amis qui ont pris la balle. Il y a eu un qui est décédé sur le sable. J'ai passé un parcours franchement difficile sur le désert. Il y a ce genre de climat sur le désert, même ça peut tuer. Il y a d'autres qui meurent de soif, de faim. Il y a d'autres qui sont épuisés, donc ils ne peuvent pas continuer. Tu vois un de ton frère et vous êtes obligé de l'enterrer sur le sable. Mon désir, c'est à la recherche de la noblesse. Donc, c'est ce qui m'a poussé de faire tous ces voyages.
Aujourd'hui, qu'est-ce qui vous empêche de rentrer à la maison?
Surtout, bon, il y a une idée de honte. J'ai dû utiliser l'héritage de la famille. Ça me touche que je retourne encore dans la famille, comment dire, sans rien, et puis continuer comme ça avec la famille.
Je comprends ça. Vous, Idriss,
Combien de temps vous avez quitté le Mali?
Moi, ça fait 6 ans. Moi, je suis pas à Libye. Je prends les drogues jusqu'à Rome. C'est sûr. Deuxième, échoué. Troisième, c'est sûr. C'est ma mère qui m'a dit que c'est moi qui ai le premier fils. C'est moi qui dois changer les pauvretés. Mais c'est le même qu'on a trouvé. Je n'ai rien. Je n'ai rien dans ma poche, je n'ai rien. Quand je veux partir à Mali, Merville, ça me fait honte. Il y a des gens qui comptent sur moi. Si on a dit qu'on n'a pas compté, on a menti. Et on est dans les trous. Dans les pires même. J'ai perdu beaucoup de choses, beaucoup. Vraiment, je ne sais pas comment je vais rentrer voilà.
Désolée, hein, ça, vous auriez pu être mes frères. Nous, on a grandi dans le même quartier, sans se connaître, mais on vient du même endroit. Et de voir des frères et des sœurs partir comme ça. Quand je vois la jeunesse vraiment de l'Afrique, avoir autant de difficultés, c'est vraiment... On perd des gens tout le temps. On perd des gens dans le désert. On perd des gens dans la mer. Et vous, vous êtes là bloqués. Vous ne devriez pas avoir vu ce que vous avez vu. Parce qu'on est africain, on ne doit pas vivre ça.
Being able to provide for your family is the duty of a lot of young people. A lot of them decide to go and find the opportunities somewhere else. They will go through hell when you really don't have the choice. You take that risk.
So I'd like to welcome our panelists to the stage. Please, if you could actually take a seat. Mukoro, please welcome the High Representative for the Coalition of the Sahel, please. No, why is this? What's happening here? You're UNCCG. So.
And that's preaching.
Exactly. Yeah, somebody made a mistake here. I haven't met Mr. Mohammed Siadouale yet.
Yes.
Please welcome. Maybe they got it wrong. Exactly. Yeah, you are with the Great Green Wall Accelerator, right?
No. I'm the ambassador.
Oh, Djibouti. Okay. I'm sorry. We got it all wrong. And then we have Akini, who I did meet, Ochieng Sagwe Moses. And then the title is wrong, I apologize. And Alex Long from the World Economic Forum, who I did meet on Zoom before this, so I got two of them right. So thank you for being here. Thank you for participating in this dialogue. This is a very personal film to me because we see a lot of these young Africans who are in this little space where they don't know what choice to make in terms of just being able to make a livelihood. And this issue of what I call active solidarity is in terms of sending money back home, and many of us Africans living in diaspora can relate to it. You know, I send money to Togo to 13 people every single month. You know, my mother and a lot of people. This is something that we have to relate to. And the shame that comes with not being able to provide for your family is something that diaspora Africans can relate to. It's the issue of remittances, and it's really big. When we started shooting this film back in 2019 was when we actually started shooting it. The estimate was that 50 million Africans from the Sahel were going to try to migrate to Europe somehow. And you see them on these rickety boats, and many of them end up dying. The latest estimate from 2022 is actually 85 million Africans expected to migrate before 2050. So it's a real crisis, it's a humanitarian crisis. We shot the film in Nigeria, and a lot of people don't know that there are more children born in Nigeria every year than in the entire European Union of 27 countries. So this population growth is explosive. There are 200 million people in Nigeria now. By the end of the century, there's going to be close to 1 billion people living in Nigeria. So I'm going to start with the question that we're asking on this panel discussion, which is this Great Green Wall myth or reality? And I'm going to start with you, Mr. Bukuru. Or maybe I'll just go be informal in the way that Nina led her panel, and I'll just call you Nankiad. Does it work, the mic?
Hello?
Yes. Is it a myth or is it reality, according to you?
It used to be a myth, but now it is a reality. It's a living wall. Actually, it started as a green fence. It did not work. Because in the past, we tried to build the fences to block the encroachment of the deserts. We did it in Algeria. It didn't work. So now there has been a shift that instead of a fence or a wall, it is a whole program. It is a mosaic of activities. And we have started to see some results, although now limited, but the program has attracted many people, many partners, including you, because that movie helped to sensitize the world on the plight of the youth in Africa. So we had already the establishment of the accelerator that the UNSCD Secretariat is happy to host, and that has received a pledge of up to close to $19 billion. So that is the money that it can be invested there, and now we see that it's a starting of a restoration movement. Now the countries, they want to restore degraded lands to make them, to bring them back to the fertile status. So that the program is a good example as to how, instead of hopelessness, we can build, we can accelerate something very, very important. And here, allow me to spend a minute on the previous panel, because they mentioned the assets that are in the Sahel, the land, the youth. One thing they overlooked is an asset that will transform the Sahel, is the sun. The sun there is still a curse. That sun, it can be an occasion, an opportunity to lift up people out of the darkness, the poverty. That sun can help to harness other resources like water, because it's a paradox. The Sahel is a region with a lot of water, but to have access to that water, you need energy. We will do sun there. is there to stay. So let's, I mean, the key message here is to transform a curse into in a very sustainable way. So we can have the land of opportunities and oasis of the prosperities in the Sahel. So in short, it's no longer a myth, it's a living reality. The important thing is that everybody got together to help to push this wonder into the making. And I bet in 10 years, by 2020, we will see a difference in terms of ecosystem change and also the way we lift people out of the poverty and hunger. And we will make also women enjoy more because I went to Niger some years ago. I met some ladies who spent a whole day going to fetch water. So that will stop if we use the resources that are available now, and also the political will that will start to emerge.
And Kiara, I want to maybe play devil's advocate a little bit, because in my experience, having shown this film dozens of times outside of Africa and on the African continent, is when I organize meetings in Africa, not one of the African youth has heard of the project. They were where I was 4 years ago. And the reports that are coming from Niger, what we shot is that a lot of women feel excluded from the green projects that are around the Great Green Wall. So my question is, do you really believe that this Great Green Wall has been embraced by African populations on the front line at the grassroots level, or is it just something that can be discussed here at the French consulate? You know, we organized a screening for President Macron at the Élysée Palace. We organized a screening for Prince Charles in London, Desmond Tutu before he died. I mean, great and influential people have embraced this in great institutions like the United Nations, World Bank, and so on. But do you think Africans underground are involved in pushing this forward? That is the myth versus reality question that I'm asking.
Before it is embraced by the youth, the local people, it has to be endorsed by the leadership. The leadership is a key to put the program forward. Look, in the movie you show, you can go back in time when Europeans started to live in Europe, to cross the oceans, also at the peril of their lives. Maybe we tend to do that as smooth sailing, etc. So the factors that push the young people seem to be the same as of now. Meaning you live on a land that's no longer capable to sustain your lives. Okay, so in short, to answer to the question, once the leadership is aware of it, then it will bring the population to embrace it. And maybe to speak as sitting next to my brother, the ambassador of Djibouti to the UN, I saw the president. He was in Abidjan at the COP, and I started to see really a movement, a mindset change in the minds of the leaders in Africa where today because at the COP we had the first day we had 15 head of states who were there, and all of them they mentioned the Green Wall, and even the president of Namibia who is far away, he said we can emulate what we have been in the Sahel to bring it to the SADC and to East Africa. So it's taking shape, and I think the youth will believe in it once they decide to see the dividends of this, and the dividends are coming very soon.
Okay, I'm glad you talked about the issue of leadership, which I'm kind of conflating with the issue of ownership. And this is a question for you, Ambassador. I don't know if I should call you His Excellency or Mohammed. What are you?
Mohammed.
Okay. So you are the Ambassador of Djibouti, and you are at the United Nations. And a lot of people who are involved in this Great Green Wall kind of evangelistic process that we're in right now have been complaining. And I'll tell you why. Initially, the African Union created this agency called the Pan-African Agency for the Great Green Wall, which kind of felt like a very African project. And then our great President Macron, he created and empowered out of Bonn the Great Green Wall Accelerator, which you're involved in. And a lot of people felt, once again, the destiny of Africans is being taken away from the Pan-African Agency, which is based in Nouakchott in Mauritania and being run out of Bonn, under a kind of French UN partnership. And I'd love to challenge you as a diplomat in the most diplomatic way that I can on this tension that is perceived as taking ownership and leadership away from the Africans and more towards the French.
Thank you, Claude. First, I should applaud your efforts in putting this document together. It's collaboration. It helps, I think, capture the essence of some of the things we are struggling with as a country. Our greatest asset is the youth, and we see how desperate the youth can be when they're not offered opportunities in their own country. There are a combination of factors that explain that. But just briefly on the meat of this reality, the sheer size of the project, I think, leads some to believe that this can be true. And we have in Africa a long history of big projects that never seen the light of the day. It used to be called white elephants. So can this be another white elephant because it's titanic, because it's gigantic? I do not believe so. But because it's big, it takes a while before it takes root. And I think slowly, gradually, we are seeing momentum being built. And when the leaders back in 2007 wholeheartedly espoused the idea, Djibouti, as one of the countries concerned, I think 11, of course, joined because, and before answering your question, I'd like to just give some background on where we're coming from. As Djibouti, we live in a region where it's drought-stricken, and between 1974 and 1984, we had a series of natural disasters, widespread famine because of drought. And we came together as countries in the region, and we formed an organization that was called IGAD with 2 E's. So Intergovernmental Authority for Drought and Development. So drought was the first enemy that we joined forces to combat. And of course, in 1986, because we had also a series of conflict in the region, the organization was revamped and the revitalized IGAD lost 1 D. It lost the D, the drought. But that doesn't mean that we have shifted our focus away from drought. So this has been a concern for us. An existential threat. This is why we joined the Great Green Wall, and this is why President Kelly was in Abidjan in May of the 20th. Now, you talked about the accelerator and the Pan-African Agency and Nouakchott base. I don't think there should be tension between a helping hand from the partners and our own initiative. I think there are ways to reconcile both. And this brings me, and allow me to digress a little bit to the first panel. The first panel was interesting, and I like to borrow a phrase. Dr. Lisa, when she said that African countries should define what their priorities are, and then others should come and help them with what it is exactly that they need. And G5 Sahel, I think, this is what such one effort. African countries came together they were able to articulate what their priorities are. Of course, there were huge financial resources, but the gaps are there. They could never be met. And take any initiative, yeah, it's a hypothesis that we can use. There will be a resource gap. Africans are good at identifying and developing blueprints, economic blueprints, political solutions, and you would recall that in the 90s, when we had a series of intra-state conflict, we developed, I think, a technology for conflict resolution. We have amassed a lot of expertise, experience, and we have a vast network of conflict resolution experts throughout the continent. But because in any, when security breaks down, you will need resources. And there were always resource gaps, and this explains most of the time. I won't say every time, but most of the time, why we have relapsed into violence. So to respond to your question, there shouldn't be tension. I think we can reconcile, and it's not mutually exclusive. And the initiative by President Macron is a direct response to some of the challenges that were identified in the landmark UN report. And I believe there should be ways of enhancing coordination and interaction with the much of these Pan-African agency.
But I want to maybe push back just a little bit and give maybe just one factor that can help to inform the reasoning behind my question. So the European Union, for instance, does not really fund projects out of the Pan-African Agency. This is what's been happening, right? And so the African Union is totally, in some cases, when it comes to funding and the $19 billion that have been pledged for this project is bypassed, right? And there are other funding mechanisms that are outside of the African Union. And Mr. Bouty, as a member of the African Union, I'm just wondering, to be really specific here, how can Africans actually take ownership of this project if they're not trusted to manage money around an issue that is so vital to the survival and the future of Africa?
And you see, there shouldn't be any doubt about the ownership of the project. This is the African Union's flagship project. It's supported at the highest level. And I think that in COP15, this was re-emphasized. But in terms of funding, there must be ways of ensuring that we identify bankable projects and then secure the financing for those projects.
Right.
And the fact that President Adesina of the African Development Bank and Africa is now the champion of the African Bank, I think will go a long way in building bridging the gap.
Great. Thank you for that answer. It was important for me to ask this as an African, as a native son of Togo. It's important for me to ask questions related to independence and ownership and what I always call sway. Now, Makini, this is like a question around challenges and opportunities. And specifically, there are a lot of opportunities around this Great Green Wall as an idealistic vision of an environmental project that could be game-changing for an entire region in Africa. But there are also some challenges on the ground, right? The Lake Chad is receding, it's receded by 90%, which will lead to terrorism, to conflict, to land degradation, pretty much everywhere around Lake Chad. And we hear of challenges like that all over the Sahel. So if I'm going to ask you a broad question around what you perceive to be one major challenge and what you perceive to be, conversely, one major opportunity around the Great Green Wall, what would your answer be?
Well, I think that what your film so eloquently pointed out is that the Great Green Wall isn't just about trees, right? It's about opportunity. And it's about an ambitious rural development program that we need to co-develop together. And I think when I look at the challenges side, one of the biggest challenges I see, and why you might hear people not understanding what the Great Green Wall is this kind of piecemeal approach to finding out about it. And that government has priorities over here. here, private sector is engaging in this way, but how does it link up to this broader agenda? And so I think that there's a coordination issue that needs to be solved from the private sector, from the farmers themselves, from nonprofits like SOS Sahel working on the ground. All of these actors need to work together and be reinforcing the same messaging and be aligned in their priorities. And I see that as one of the biggest problems that needs to be solved for. Because, to Dr. Chris's earlier point, why would a private sector actor engage unless they feel security in their investment? So you have to de-risk that. And one of the ways I think that you can de-risk that is through partnerships. But on the opportunity side, one thing that I'm really excited about, and an area that SOS has spent a lot of time working on, I've also worked on myself, is investing in Sahelian products. I think that this is...
Can you repeat, investing in what product?
In Sahelian products.
Sahelian products.
So when I say that, I'm talking about bamboo beans, I'm talking about shea nuts, I'm talking about bean seeds, I'm talking about all the products that are indigenous to this region that the world might not be familiar with, but have great medicinal properties, etc., that are very attractive to global supply chain managers, right? How can we improve the awareness and understanding of those products? How can we encourage you to see that as an opportunity? How can we work with international development partners and trade partners to eliminate the barriers that prevent those products from being sold in international markets? So for example, shea, I'll talk specifically about shea. For many years there were issues in large-scale exports of shea due to phytosanitary guidelines in the European Union specifically. Shea, most people know it for its cosmetic properties, it's actually used most prominently in chocolate as a chocolate substitute. So how do we work with all of those actors, that coordination kind of challenge I highlighted earlier? How do we work with all those actors to eliminate those kind of barriers that allow the opportunities to really scale?
I want to come back to you after asking Remy a follow-up question. On this front row here, I don't know if we had it on other rows, we had the acacia gum as a gift. I'm thinking it's a gift. I'm hoping we don't have to give it back before we leave. And I want to give you the mic for a quick second before we come back to Akinyi, so you can tell us a little bit about why you decided to put that and what the process is.
Because it's the testimony about what is done in the Sahel. The gum arabic is used everywhere. There's so many products everywhere in the world. And as Akinyi was saying, if we level the barrier to increase gum arabic production, to sustain also capacities of farmers to get better assets in order to have better productions and better income from the harvest, I think it's one of the first reasons that we need to make renewable a reality and not a myth.
I like the spirit of the glass being half full and not half empty. And Akinyi, I want to come back to you because I like these very specific examples that you give, because we're going to talk about a supply chain, which is about exporting Sahelian products. Can you perhaps give us another example? Because I know that I see Pierre Thiam in the back there, and he actually came to the very first meeting that I hosted in New York in my building, in the cinema in my building. And a lot of people should know that he is one of the leaders in our movement with his Renulele, which is biphonial. But I'll come back to you there because that's a real example. But Akinyi, what about you? Can you give us perhaps another example?
I'm going to stick with what I know, which is shea butter.
Yes.
So bear with me. So when we were launching the Sustainable Shea Initiative in partnership with various private sector actors, so the Body Shop, Hershey Company, L'Occitane, etc., but also USA, also the governments of various countries in the Sahel and also beyond, so Ghana, Nigeria, Mali, Burkina Faso, etc. One of the things that we found that was essential for this really to take root, and for these the female women, the women who are the foundation of the shea supply chain, is that there really has to be wraparound support. So it's not only about ensuring that the trees are planted, because shea trees are disappearing rapidly in the landscape unless they are replanted now. Shea butter supply is at risk because the tree takes so long to grow. So it's not only about planting the trees, right? It's about educating people as to why you want to think about conservation. If you're cutting down those trees to burn the wood to then produce the butter, well, you're depleting your future supply. Okay, how do we help you think about business development? How do we help you aggregate such that you can sell your nuts and your butter competitively? How do you learn about quality in such that you can produce at the quality with the quality standards necessary for you to really export at scale. So I think it's about this wraparound support, which requires so many different actors to be involved. And so that's just one example that I think you need a multi-pronged intervention in order to really see the kind of change that will allow these products to take off at scale.
I like the word scale. Thank you for that. And Shea is a great example. There's a few brands right now that are kind of emerging, that are breaking through the clutter, and that are being sold here in the United States and elsewhere. So that is also giving us a lot of hope. Alex, I want to maybe come to you now, because the World Economic Forum has been extremely supportive of the Great Green Wall Project and of our film. In Moja, the singer that I chose, the Malian singer that I chose as the lead protagonist for this film, the one you saw in the clip here, she was actually calling me 2 weeks ago from Davos every day, because there was so much support for what we did, and I wasn't able to go, unfortunately, but the World Economic Forum has been very much on the front lines of leading projects related to tree planting, to environmental sustainability, and you're actually a specialist in the issue of resources related to water and other kind of environmental projects that are under the aegis of the World Economic Forum. So I'd like you to tell us, number one, why the World Economic Forum decided to back this project and help us to spread the word, and what specifically you feel you can do as a catalyst to turn this dream into a reality that could be beneficial for so many populations along the Sahel and elsewhere.
Thanks for that question, Paul. That was actually where I was going to start first. Why is the World Economic Forum sitting on stage here? Yes. And why this topic? And I think I'm going to draw on a couple of the threads that we've talked about already. The opportunities that we just heard about from the panel before. One of the greatest assets being the people, entrepreneurship, and if given an opportunity, they could flourish. The investment that could be drawn in if the connections can be made. And I think that's where the World Economic Forum is coming in. And you said that, yes, we do lead projects, but actually what I'm most excited about here and why the Sahel and the Great Green Wall Initiative is one of our strategic priorities and key geographies of our 1 Trillion Trees Initiative is because of actually the local entrepreneurship that's happening. And what we would like to do is actually give the visibility to your point earlier on about I didn't know about it, but give the visibility to not only the initiative, but the entrepreneurs that are making a difference, to shine the spotlight on them, show the opportunities, and by that, can we attract more investment, can we attract more attention, and build momentum as we go forward. We do believe in the tremendous opportunity that commercially viable restoration can have on economic, social, and environmental benefits. There's some great examples we've heard of. It's tough, as we've seen through footage. Congratulations on that. And as we've heard in the first panel. But I do believe that there are pockets of really exciting things happening. You mentioned the shared value chain. One of the ecopreneurs that we've identified and are supporting in the sort of restoration side of things, Tree Aid in Mali. Now, through their project, I understand, and I'm going to look at it, through the Integrated Forest Management Livelihood approach, 650,000 trees either planted or restored. But what that has turned into a decrease of 34% proportion of households that are now above the poverty line. That's pretty cool. And so, in addition to that, the ability to now have resilience, they're saving more, they're having more income in their livelihoods. 75% of the respondents in the survey have said we have better access to forest resources. All of this is pretty cool. But I would suppose that not that many people outside of the circle know about that. But we all should, and we should then all support it. So that's where we want to come in. We want to use the attention that we can perhaps garner and our assets to shine the spotlight on these entrepreneurs, ecopreneurs, what we're calling, and to give them that chance. to show what can be done. And perhaps through that, yes, we might be able to attract investment, but equally, and I think even more important, we can inspire 60% of the youth. If they can do it, maybe I have a shot. And with the right connections, maybe it will work. And then through that, can we get more and more and more? That's what we want to do.
I want to ask you a rather technical question, and please bear with me, those of you who feel like it's getting too technical, but this is going to be my last question before I turn it over to the audience. Since you're such an expert, so knowledgeable about hydraulic systems and irrigation and so on, some people on the ground who were filming told me, and of course we didn't put this in the film, that they were unhappy with the choice of trees that were being planted because it was trees that grew really, really fast. And the scientists kind of realized that these trees that grow so fast, they don't actually contribute to carbon capture in the way that other trees would. And I'd like you to tell us a little bit about what, in this huge effort that you have at the World Economic Forum to plant so many trees, what we should know about the kinds of trees that should be planted, or is it just any tree is good for the environment?
So, not a tree expert myself, but indeed, different trees matter, and context specific. And I think, again, what is more important here is we can, through the network, create that sort of connections to the right people that know what trees are to be planted, where, how best to support them, maintain them, have sustainable management. But equally, I would also suppose that, yes, we've got a big network of people, perhaps experts and academics that could offer some ideas, but equally, I think there is local knowledge as well. And it is about enabling, finding those the local sources of knowledge, supporting them with what they need, and making those connections. So yes, important, but it's perhaps not so much for us to bring the international experts in to dictate, but actually support what's the local knowledge base there.
Thank you. I want to turn it over to the audience now, but before I do that, I do have the privilege of being the one who holds the mic, so I'm the custodian. I'm going to put my friend Pierre Thiam on the spot because your name was mentioned before I did mention. And I want you to tell us about your Lele and your vision and your achievements, because this man right here, he is making us very, very proud. He's very modest. He's raised significant funding for his project, which is so aligned with the sustainability efforts that we're building with the Great Green Wall. So Pierre Thiam, I want to give you the mic so you can tell us about your Lele and what your dream is.
Thank you everyone. And indeed, I was one of the fortunate, lucky ones who saw the premiere of this movie a couple of years ago, right before the pandemic. And that resonates, the Great Green Wall for me resonated way before even the idea of, before I heard about it, before I heard about the movie. I'm a chef from Senegal, and I'm very concerned with the food system that we're in, the food system, which is actually the big culprit we talk about climate change. And that's why when we talk about this Great Green Wall, we have to keep in mind that it concerns not only the Sahel region, it concerns the whole world. Because the plants, the crops that grow in the Sahel, they hold the key to our food security. And every crisis that's happening is confirming it. The food system is limited. We have a limited diet. We are eating 4 grains. Half the world is depending on 4 grains. And those grains are concentrated in regions of the world. Most of those grains are like, either for wheat, we have Russia and Ukraine, and today we are having a serious crisis. Africa is not having access to wheat, and we're depending on wheat because for our colonial past, we now be having a complete dependency on wheat, and that's ridiculous. Africa is the continent that has the largest diversity of plant crops, of plant food, and there's not enough research that's being done on the continent. The research has been done, are concentrated, are being focused still on the crops that are already in the market, in the food system: wheat, rice, soy, and corn. Another crisis will happen. Corn is coming from 4 countries in the world. the pandemic happened, we saw that there was also a crisis. In 2008, there was a crisis that created the Arab Spring. So all of those crises are just creating more and more food crises, and the only way for us to get out of it is to integrate underutilized crops, and most of them are in Africa. As a chef, I wanted to do something significant. It came organically. It wasn't like a big vision. It was, first of all, just making sure the readers of my cookbooks have access to ingredients to be able to cook it out of the home. And as I'm doing that, I'm like figuring out a way to choose ingredients that are underutilized, choose ingredients that will bring economic opportunities into the small farming communities of the Sahel. Those farmers have amazing crops, but they don't have access to markets. One of the crops that became the one that I've championed is called fonio. It's the oldest cultivated grain in Africa, 5,000 years, very resilient, drought resistant. It grows in poor soil, but it restores the soil. It has the particularity of regenerating the soil. So these are the type of crops that we need to think about integrating in our system. Not only it restores the soil, but it's a nutrition powerhouse. It's gluten-free, it's rich in fibers, it's rich in so many, it has some properties, and cooks in 5 minutes and it's delicious, obviously. This is what we do. So that's really the kind of thing. And for just one example, shea butter is another one. There's so many of those plants and those products that used to grow in the Sahel, and this is how we have to think of the Great Green Wall, reintegrating those products because they adapted to that environment. They are drought resistant, they are resilient, but they also have economic benefits. Fonio is now in demand. We started in 2017, a crop that was not known in the US at all, and today we are distributed across the US. We are distributed all of the whole food supermarkets. We are distributed in Target. It's growing, the demand is growing in such a way that now we have to work on the supply side and grow with a network of farmers, a growing network of farmers. And to join Akili here, we just have 30,000 farmers that were growing shea butter in Mali, and those shea butter growers, they also live in fonio growing land. And now they join, now they have two sources of income. Now they're growing shea butter, and they're collecting shea nuts, and they're growing fonio for our distribution in the US, and the demand is growing. The Gen Zs are looking for those products. Everyone is trying to make a change. They're looking for products that are nutritious. They're looking for products that are great for the environment, and they want to make an impact. So this is a way forward. This is one example, one crop, fonio and shea butter. But there are many others, acacias, Arabic gum. With SOS Sahel, Arabic gum has been able to connect with small farmers, and now they're opening into amazing distribution. Like the largest Arabic gum distributor is a supporter of SOS Sahel, and that's just a way to move forward. It's really a way to disrupt this big food system that has been holding us hostages. You know, they're making the decisions. They are not about food. They are really about their shareholders' pockets and the bottom line, and that's not what it should be about. Food should be about community. It should have a holistic approach. And it should begin at the small farmers level. It should begin really, that's where we should start thinking at the small farmers level. What's important, what's good for them. They know how to grow those crops. Let's support them and grow the crops that they know how to grow. They will feed themselves. There's a demand growing for that. The world needs to have a diversity of food. And you know, it's also more exciting. The foodies are here to prove it. And fonio was an example that we did. And I can talk on and on about it.
I just from the Consulate General that we're going to have our conversations at the reception, so we are definitely at time. And I wanted to thank our panelists for this wonderful discussion about the opportunities. We'll talk about challenges, the opportunities are on the Great Green Wall. And I want to thank you, the audience, for being so patient with us. Thank you. We'll see